Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 5, Episode 21, presented by Market Dial. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
So a few days after the big day, Steve, but happy Thanksgiving. And do you have any particular traditions in your family, food on the table or shopping, like anything that always has to be on the table for Thanksgiving?
Not so much. Usually it's just a debate about how much I enjoy cranberry sauce and my kids loathe it. That's the big debate.
Cranberry sauce could be pretty polarizing, actually. I was on a Twitter feed about stuffing. I love stuffing, but there's people who just think
love stuffing.
I know. I couldn't get over the whole discussion, but anyway. And we should take this opportunity to thank all of our many fantastic guests who have graced us with their insights, and the many, many listeners and subscribers here in North America, around the world. And recently, even you sent me along. These folks at Loyal Guru named us the #1 retail podcast. So thanks to everybody just for supporting us and the work we do. And thanks to you for being my partner in this fun venture.
Well, likewise, I'm gonna start to tear up a little bit here. But yes, we've been very fortunate to grow the audience quite a bit this year. We've got a new sponsor. We've made it onto a bunch of these lists. 5-star review, perfect 5-star rating on Apple, which, by the way, we wouldn't mind if our listeners would head on over to Apple. We'll pause here and wait while you do that.
A little bit of thanks in advance for that one. Yeah,
thanks in advance for that. Yeah, but it's been great, and we got a lot more exciting things to wrap up this season and to jump into next year. So stay tuned for that. Yeah,
and speaking of next year, as we said, we've been renewed for another year. Thanks again to Stephen and the folks at Market Dial. So we'll be back starting our 6th season in and around the NRF show. And in this episode, our very special guest, recorded live in person at the NACS, National Association of Convenience Stores Conference in Las Vegas in the Market Dial podcasting studio, is Allison Cornish, Vice President Store Modernization for Pilot Flying J.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. First of all, I felt like we were drinking from a fire hose on convenience store stuff in the last couple months, but it's all super interesting. And Pilot J, if folks don't know, they'll learn more about it in the interview, of course, but Pilot J, owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and really a massive player in the space, and growing and doing lots of interesting things. So very much enjoyed that conversation with Allison.
Yeah, and she's very accomplished. She was actually coincidentally named at the show one of the top women in convenience for 2022. So very accomplished in her field, and gives us a good broad understanding of the industry as well. And a reminder to everybody to be sure and check out our most recent bonus episode released late last week with Stuart Taylor, VP Business Insights and Analytics from Come and Go, released last Friday. All right, well, let's jump in. We're recording this on Friday, so it's the beginning of the Black Friday Cyber Monday weekend for us. But any thoughts on the event itself and perspectives? I mean, we're releasing this the day after, so all the excitement has happened. But any thoughts? Do you shop on Black Friday, Cyber Monday? Do you hold back and shop? And do you think some of the excitement's come out? And what's your general thinking on the weekend?
This is a dirty little secret. I think I've shared this with you before. Is despite many of our friends and various folks out there in the malls checking things out, I am very proud to not go into stores on Friday. I think it's just, I don't believe that my anecdotal observations add anything to the conversation as much as I enjoy seeing various reporters standing up in malls talking about whether they see people with shopping bags or whatever, as if that's some scientific explanation. So, So I abstain and generally spend time with family. I may do some online shopping for sure. But, my overall impressions over the years really is that Black Friday and Cyber Monday have a lot of hype associated with them. They're certainly important shopping days, but I think studies have shown that performance over this Black Friday, Cyber Monday period are not necessarily correlated very well with how retailers do. I think what's interesting about this year in particular, and we'll, I think, touch on this a little bit more in a minute, is that, business has gotten quite a bit tougher. We've heard a lot of retailers talk about how sales have decelerated going into November, and we also know that a lot of retailers are saddled with inventory gluts. So my general sense, and I think there's some data starting to back this up, is that the discounts are steeper than they have been. So that puts extra pressure on how retailers do over the next few days. But the real action is the back part of December. I mean, that's where the margin thing really starts to sort itself out, and that's where a lot of the big shopping days will be. So, so kind of, I wouldn't say I'm sitting this one out, but I don't get as, I guess, wrapped around the axle about how critically important it is.
Well, on this side of the border in Canada, Black Friday, Cyber Monday is actually fairly new. It's only about 10, 12 years that we've been doing it here in Canada. And so it's still got some shine on. Of course, it's very different because it's not a holiday, right? Friday's not a holiday.
You got Thanksgiving on the wrong day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're a little colder temperatures, so the harvest happened earlier. So our Thanksgiving is long past. Now, I will share with you some interesting information with Retail Council Canada and Leger. We put out a report, and we've been doing it for 5 years. And we asked customers what their intention is, and I'll just share with you that when we asked what percentage of their overall holiday spend budget they would spend on the following big days, Black Friday was 22%, Cyber Monday 16%, and Boxing Day, which is a big deal, and neither of these are exactly days either, but Boxing Day, which starts the day after Christmas, or the second day after Christmas, was 12%. Let's talk about earnings. It's been a relatively slow week for business news, but Best Buy came out with some news, and Nordstrom and Dick's. So what say you about the results?
Well, I'm starting to feel, and we talked about this last week, that less bad is the new good, because Best Buy had their stock go up quite a bit this week, despite reporting comps down negative 10.4%, their earnings being down, I think, about 40% or something like that year over year. And they maintain their guidance, which I guess is good because it says they don't see things getting worse. But their guidance for the next quarter is for sales to be down 10%. So not exactly a stellar earnings report. But again, because of expectations being what they were, the stock bounced back. And kind of a similar story on Nordstrom. They beat expectations a bit as well. Their sales, though, were down. I think their flagship, or the Nordstrom brand, the full-line stores, were down 2%. Nordstrom Rack down 3%, the off-price concept. Their digital sales were down 16% year over year. So, seeing this with a bunch of retailers where they're comping on the digital side of things to kind of unusually strong numbers.
Wouldn't you expect the Rack to be a little counter to that? Because if people are maybe looking for a bit more discounting, there it is at the Rack, right?
Generally, I would agree with you. The thing with the Rack, which has been a challenge for them, I think probably going on a couple years now, is the Rack has really been underperforming. And there's various theories on this that, and I generally agree with this, that the concepts, the Rack assortment has grown a little bit too similar to the full line store. And I think some of their execution has waned. So I agree with you. I mean, from a segment standpoint, you would think the value-oriented players perform better. But I think it's mainly on the merchandising strategy and some of the execution, which they alluded to in their earnings call. So they got some work to do there. I guess the star of the week in a lot of regards was Dick's Sporting Goods, which has had really, they've been on a tear for 2 or 3 years now. They had a solid comp number. Their earnings were down a little bit year over year. I mean, we continue to see some pricing and margin pressure, but they actually raised their guidance, which has been pretty unusual for the folks that reported in this cycle. So they're doing pretty well. But still, I guess against a lot of backdrop, as I mentioned earlier, of just things seem to be slowing down in terms of consumer spending. Now, whether that is consumers maybe stepping off the gas a little bit to save or to use the money that they have for the holidays, I guess that's we'll need to have a fuller picture to. But the real outlier is Kohl's. 41% difference between their growth in inventory and their sales performance.
So, as Scooby-Doo would say.
Yeah, and they, I guess remains to be seen what this quarter will look like, but certainly the trends that they've been on for several quarters are quite poor. So I just don't know how low can you go to move through that much inventory. Now, I assume they've been canceling orders and stuff. So there's a bunch of ways you can try to get those things back in line. Clearly, Target and Walmart were able to get out of a lot of inventory because they didn't have huge sales increases. That wasn't what helped them get back in track. So that's going to be a really, really interesting story when we get through this quarter, and definitely will contribute to, I think, an extensive amount of discounting in apparel, pretty much across the board.
Well, in your job interview for the Kohl's leadership, I'm sure you're going to be asked to come up with a solution for that.
So we've got lots of ideas.
So we'll ask all the listeners.
PowerPoints already together.
Ask all the listeners. Give Steve ideas for his job interview for the Kohl's presidency. Let's talk about Amazon, customer satisfaction, and then let's talk about Bed Bath & Beyond, which has got some troubling tea leaves.
Yeah, just really quickly, there was a report that was put out about how Amazon's customer satisfaction has been on the decline. And one of the things that a number of commentators got into was how much Amazon has been increasing advertising on the site. And so part of the theory here was that the shopping experience, you're there to buy stuff, has been deteriorated by Amazon emphasizing advertising and changing, kind of the search function. I'm sure anybody who shops on Amazon is probably familiar with this and perhaps has noted this as well. What I think is interesting, we've had a couple of episodes this season about retail media networks, and this is one of the things we've talked about as advertisers or as retailers start to emphasize the profits that can be made from media. How does that balance out against the core business of selling things? And this was just a suggestion that perhaps Amazon has tilted things too much in favor of advertising. But as we know, they're generating huge profits from advertising, and that is a growing piece. So as Amazon goes through this strategic review and is looking for ways to kind of get that overall retail profitability mix up, I'm presuming they're looking for ways to get that mix in a little bit better shape. It'll be interesting to see whether they make any changes in the customer experience.
Yeah, well, I guess one of their also key indicators is the renewal rates on Prime, which are stunningly high. I mean, they're Costco-like high, right? So if that starts to slip, that's a real important index I'm sure they watch, which indicates, little trouble with the product and maybe dissatisfaction with the overall experience. So, super smart group of folks. I'm sure they're keeping an eye on it, but they're weighing the pros and cons, right? Okay, maybe site experience rating slipped a point, but we made 5 points on advertising. So, that's not a terrible trade-off, I suppose, to some point. Eventually, it leads to...
just, you got to turn the knobs, I guess, and get that in the right place.
Let's wrap up with, it's not much to say about this, but there's kind of rumors or thoughts around Bed Bath & Beyond actually being able to get enough inventory counter to the whole conversation we've been having, because people are a little bit afraid, they're not factoring, or they're a little bit afraid of them not paying them, I guess, or giving them product and being at risk of not getting paid.
Yeah, there's a story that came out this week about how their out-of-stock situation has gotten quite a bit worse, with the speculation being, not even, I guess, speculation. I guess there were some quotes from vendors that were not shipping because they're afraid about getting whether they get paid or not. And unfortunately, it's like this downward spiral that can occur when you get yourself into trouble, fears of bankruptcy or whatever it might be, that it takes a situation that is already obviously quite challenging there at Bed Bath & Beyond and actually makes it worse because you don't have stuff to sell. So with any luck, they will be able to navigate their way through this. I still am of the belief that we're likely to see a bankruptcy filing there early
Q1
in the year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
That would be my guess. So that's definitely a situation to watch. I was also going to just briefly mention, this is not a retailer that's as high profile, but Tuesday Morning, one of the discounters or off-price retailers that kind of pioneered that category way back when, they've been going through a lot of struggles as well. So that they're on the, on the watch list for retailers that may be lucky to limp into next year, unfortunately.
Well, I guess there's a page in your PowerPoint for the Kohl's gig is we'll sell our stuff to Bed Bath & Beyond. There you go.
The circle of merchandise life.
All right, now just before we get to our great interview with Allison Cornish from Flying J, let's hear from our presenting sponsor, MarketDial. MarketDial is an easy-to-use testing platform and emboldens great decisions, leading to reliable, scalable results. With Market Dial, you can be confident in the outcome of your in-store pilot initiatives before rolling them out across your fleet. In a challenging retail climate of supply chain disruption, labor shortages, and dynamic customer behavior, the need for reliable insights has never been greater. Validate your remarkable ideas with Market Dial's in-store testing solution. The proof is in the testing. Learn more at marketdial.com. That's marketdial.com.
Well, Allison Cornish, welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, live from NACS. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, we're excited to have you here. So we always love to just start out hearing a little bit about our guests' personal and professional journey and the work they currently do, and then we'll dig into our other questions.
Awesome. Well, Allison Cornish, I work at the Pilot Company as the Vice President of Store Modernization, and I've had the pleasure of working with Pilot for 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Done a variety of roles.
You start when you're like 12.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. I've done a variety of things for the company. I've ran stores, but then I've also worked with our leadership team, supporting our stores across North America. So it's been a great journey, great company to work for.
Yeah. Folks, I think throughout the U.S. certainly will know about Pilot. It's kind of hard to drive around and not run into one of your locations. But for people that may not have a sense of what you're about and how big you are and that kind of stuff, just give us a little bit of color commentary around the business and scale and scope and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we've been in business for more than 64 years. We are a travel center chain. You'll find us in 44 states and 6 provinces in Canada. We're primarily, as I said, travel centers. So you'll see commercial fueling lanes on the back. You'll see gas islands on the front. We typically have food offerings in our store. It's a variety of food offerings. We have a variety of different QSR brand partners that we do business with. And we offer merchandise for every occasion. So a great place to stop if you're on an interstate, if you're driving. We want to be the place that you will see on the interstate to stop, rest up.
I found it sort of hard to miss, which is probably what you're going for.
Yeah.
Right on.
We're everywhere.
Right on.
Excellent.
Right on.
Thank you.
Now, let's get back to you for a little bit. I understand you've won an industry award or are winning an industry award. What is it, and tell me about it.
I did. So I was very humbled to receive the Convenience Store News Top Women in Convenience last night.
Fantastic.
So very, very excited, and obviously just a great group of women, but it was a pleasure to be recognized. So.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
23 years and industry leader. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
You just mentioned about the kind of the mix. I'm curious about the mix and I've been, of course, to your locations because they're in Canada, so I'm Canadian, I'm from Toronto. It's a real mix. It's interesting because you bring in your own product, and you mix that in with different brands. I see some big name brands. Tell me about that mix and how that comes together. I know you're not the merchant, but you're the operator, so you actually bring these things together and sit at the executive table. How do you guys look at that?
Yeah, well, we actually are a franchise operator. We actually operate about 14 brands. And we obviously have a mix of QSR brands as well as we have our own proprietary food.
Right.
And every store is different, and we treat every store differently, and we think about sort of who's stopping at that store, and that obviously helps dictate what we put in our location.
Well, let's talk about who is stopping at the locations. Is it the professional truck drivers? Like, talk about who you guys think of your customer and how you go about thinking about that.
Yeah, it's really anybody who is traveling on the road and needs a place to stop. So obviously we have a mix of guests. We obviously cater to our professional drivers, but we also cater to the auto drivers as well. And then there's those RV drivers, the one that are going cross country to vacation and whatnot. So we cater to families, business travelers, anybody who's out on the road. We stop, and we want to win their business.
It's a fascinating business because you're also I think you're a Berkshire Hathaway company as well, right?
We are.
That the seal of approval there from Berkshire Hathaway.
We're honored to be part of their portfolio.
And you move a lot of oil, I should say a lot of fuel yourselves, right? You've got tanker trucks. You're like what would we call that? Vertically integrated, fully vertically integrated, right?
Yeah, we've got a great fleet that helps supply our locations across the country.
Speaking of the drivers, it hasn't been an easy time for the professional driver, the past couple of years, and kind of continues. How do you think about that segment and making their lives a little bit easier? I mean, through the COVID era, post-COVID era, it's tough to be a professional driver, right? There's a supply chain means you might be sitting outside a dock for a couple of days. Like, how do you conceptualize that and then work that back into what the experience at your locations is going to look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. We obviously value the professional driver. You know, everything that we eat, wear, have in our homes was brought to us by a professional driver. So I'd say there's a couple of things that we think about for the professional drivers, and I'll put it sort of in three buckets. One is just our overall operations. We want to provide a consistent experience, that our operators provide, which is really clean, friendly, and full. So we want clean facilities. We want friendly team members to welcome those professional drivers, and we want to have our stores full of products that they need. I'd say the second thing that we're doing to help professional drivers is really on the technology front. So we really want to be an easy place to do business and a really connected, be able to have a connected experience for those professional drivers. So technology would be the second thing. I'd say the third thing is really this whole idea of store modernization. And, we're investing a lot of money in our facilities to update them, make them more comfortable, et cetera, with our New Horizons project. And obviously that's in the spirit of, for anybody who's on the road, but also for those professional drivers, a comfortable place for them to stop and refresh themselves.
Sure. And so let's talk about this New Horizons initiative. That's the thing that you're sort of focused the most on, right? And maybe you can just kind of, I guess, number one, give us a sense of, how that became a thing, what was driving that initiative, and then, give us some of the details in terms of what it's trying to accomplish and how you're going about prioritizing initiatives and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's actually one of the more exciting things I think we've done in our company. So let me explain what it is first. So over the next, I'll call it 3 to 4 years, we will be investing over $1 billion overhauling our locations. And we felt the time is right now. We know that the needs of our guests are changing. And we also want to prepare our locations for the future. We know that new things are coming down the pike, and we want to be able to help ourselves with that. So we are overhauling our facilities in a variety of different ways. We are looking at sort of the offerings, and specifically the food offerings that we're doing. We're looking at technology enhancements. Obviously, overall facility enhancements is a big part of it. And then, last but not least, trying to make a better place for our team members to work. And
I've been hearing at the show here. My head's kind of spinning 360 degrees, but certainly the usual kind of fried foods are kind of popular. But when you talk about changing what the kind of food is it a healthier choices? Is it a broader assortment? Like, I'm curious, as even from a whiteboard, what does the menu look like? How do we figure that out? And what that process looks like.
Sure. So we know that drivers of all sorts, so gas, professional, RVs, et cetera, that food is one of the biggest decisions when considering where to stop at a store. So what we want to do is be able to provide a breadth of offering for every occasion. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, late night snack, whatever it is. And we really have this food forward initiative, and that's where when you walk into our stores, you can't miss the food. So we will still have our partnership with our QSR brands, but we're also introducing our proprietary food, and it's a variety of offerings. So it's cold food, and it's freshly made salads and sandwiches. But we also are offering hot food as well, home style meals. So food that you typically could get at your home, we're offering it on the road, the meatloaf, the pot roast, the chicken, etc. And it's all made at our stores. So again, it's food for every occasion and food for all types of folks.
Neat. And what was the role, and one of the things I think we're particularly interested in, because both of us have worked in innovation in retail over a long period of time, but it's a constant topic on the podcast, is and not to get too in the weeds on the process, but there's obviously lots of things you could change. There's lots of money you could spend. What's the input? Is it customer research? Is it prototyping? Is it testing? Like what are the things that you use to figure out what you're going to do, and then actually decide to pull the trigger on these investments?
Yeah, so what's really different about New Horizons, because innovation and store remodels has always been something that Pilot Flying J has done.
Sure.
So what's really different about this initiative is that we took the time to really do some research. We talked to the folks that live it and breathe every day. So we talked to our guests, and we also talked to our team members. A lot of the best ideas come from those that are on the front lines.
Sure.
And we learned everything from, hey, what they like, what they don't like. They actually, some of the feedback actually dictated which stores we focused on first.
Give us an example of something that the field said, and you're an experienced operator yourself, listen, this has got to change, and took you by surprise maybe, or you on the other hand, you're like, that should change. Give me some examples.
It's everything about sort of being super intentional about store design, and how can you make a facility a lot easier to operate and work in. So thinking about adjacencies, thinking about how equipment is lined up in a kitchen, thinking about the actual equipment that you use. So again, to remove steps, make things more efficient, everything. We looked at the laundry equipment, as I said, the kitchen equipment. We've added self-checkout as part of this initiative. Again, that helps not only the guest expedite a transaction, but also helps the team member too. And we still, our team members are still there. We still have team members manning point of sales, and they also help with the self-checkouts. So that's one thing we heard from our team members. From our guests, we heard a lot about food, as I've mentioned before. It's one of our big focus areas. But it's also just sort of this whole touchless entry, too. So you can imagine after a post-COVID world, how can you make things a little bit more frictionless? And so those are just a couple examples, but being very super intentional and listening to that feedback.
And how do you sort through, and maybe you can even, if you're willing to share a little bit about what you're looking for at this event in particular, which is a ton of different vendors, lots of new technologies. How do you go about that technology mapping? I feel often, there's so much technology that gets talked about across a wide spectrum, and some of it is the latest bright, shiny object, right? And some of it is, version 1, and if you had committed to version 1 and rolled it out across your fleet, you would have spent a lot of money and time, and then suddenly you find yourself not where you need to be with the competition. So how do you vet technology, and what kinds of things are on that horizon for you in terms of innovation?
Yeah, well, one of the things that when we think about technology, we think about it in two ways. We think what's great for our guests, and also what's important to our team members.
Sure.
And I'll say, let me start with the guest first of all. We really want to have this connected experience. So using technology, our technology, specifically our app, it's creating this very consistent experience, connected experience before you even pull onto our parking lot. And that's not just for our professional drivers, but it's for our auto guests too. So when you use our app, you can start fueling, mobile fueling, and you can come inside, use our kiosks. Everything is very seamless and very connected. Offers are through there, obviously the points, etc. For our team members, we want to do anything again to make their job a little bit easier. How do we make it to where it takes less time to do something, so they can spend more time with our guests.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of things that we want to do, but it's really we spend a lot of time thinking through what's most important today.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a lot of discussion around that, and also really what can be digested by both our team members and guests. Change management with technology is obviously a big deal. So being very thoughtful about, hey, here's what you need now. And obviously. And
I hate to ask this question, but it seems like you should pilot a lot of stuff. Is that true? You can change the name of your company to Prototype. I was workshopping that all night.
You think about that all night?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't quite get the timing down right, though.
Yeah, well, in dress rehearsal, this kills. But the actual question is, do you pilot or prototype a lot of initiatives?
I think we definitely have things that are unique. So yes.
I mean, what I'm really curious about is, and Steve touched on it a little bit, and I know you've got a complete team behind you, from technologists, customer experience, the store. At the one hand, you don't want to be second or third adopter of a new technology. On the other hand, you don't want to be adopting, as Steve said, technology that's going to become, going in the wrong direction. So I guess it's that trade-off between the two, risk and reward, right? I'm always interested in these kind of whiteboard discussions about relevance and investment and return and those things. Is that how you guys just conceptually think about projects as you sit back? You've told us eloquently about how, listen, it's got to be member-focused, customer-focused, layered on our experience. Is that a sense of how the team comes together and kind of blesses the next iteration of, what would you call the connected consumer, right?
Yeah, again, we want it definitely to be a connected experience, and we want want any technology
that's the North Star, right?
Yeah, everything's connected, and we definitely want it to be a seamless sort of something that could be adaptable. and used. You can definitely put new technology initiatives out there and not have it be used. But it's really, again, sort of listening to what the needs are of the team members, what the needs are for the guests, and again, putting that in the forefront when we're making decisions.
Let's talk about a different type of technology. EV chargers are coming. It's coming eventually. I think it's a long way off, though it could be shorter than I suspect for commercial transportation, as I think there's such a possibility for that. How are you guys preparing for that future? I mean, clearly you got a whole division that moves fuel around. That's not going anywhere soon. But eventually, are we going to see multiple charging stations and fast charges? And I guess it also recalibrates how you think about the duration of the guest, how long they stay, because it's not a quick pump of the fuel. You got to sit around for a little while. How are you guys starting to think about that?
Well, definitely as part of the store modernization initiative, we are thinking about, I'd say, any guest and how they will feel in the future. So whether that's through charge, whether it's through alternative fuels, it's something that we're definitely thinking about. Happy to announce that we actually signed an agreement with EVgo and GM earlier this year, and our plan is to install EV chargers at over 500 locations in the next 3 years.
Wow, great.
So it's definitely something that we're thinking about. And again, thinking through that EV guest, again, it's important to have a comfortable place for them to stop in our facilities, but also go back to that breadth of offering. Not every, like anybody who's using a petroleum product, the needs are different. And so again, having that breadth of offering for every occasion, I think is really important.
Yeah, this is sort of a sample of one, but I have a Tesla, and one of the Tesla supercharging stations is out in the suburb of Dallas where I live. It takes 25, 30 minutes to charge up. So I'm like, now I'm here. I'm like, well, I'll go in. And I ended up sitting down and, buying some food, and I spent, $10 or something on a bunch of stuff just because I was killing time. And it was a pretty big store, and so there was actually a nice selection of choices. So I hadn't really...
I got to think it opens up a whole new segment of customers for you, right? Who are like, your brand is, as you say, for the travel customer. But if I need to charge and there's not, they're not plentiful. I'm
not in a hurry. Necessarily.
I don't know how are consumers thinking about that. I'm going to plan my day around it, so I'm going to stop in for coffee, breakfast, and do some work while I'm there. So you must be thinking about that in the layouts and all that.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
That, right?
Having again that breadth of offering, that comfortable place for them to sit. And I think one of the things that's really great about Pilot Company and where our locations are located, again, it's right off the interstate.
Yeah.
So, if you're traveling across country, we're really going to help with that range anxiety. So I think we're poised and have a great network to help support the EV charger.
Well, it's a funny question, but what's next? Because that's what we've been talking about for most of the podcast. But as you think about, obviously your major project is the big what's next, but what's the next kind of milestones or benchmarks? What are you thinking about?
Well, as I said earlier, Pilot Flying J has been in the innovation business since we started. So again, 64 years of innovation, and we'll continue to innovate. And we'll continue to listen to the guests and continue to listen to our team members about what they need next. So whether it's the next food trend, it's the next retail trend, again, it's the next fuel trend, we'll continue to keep our ear to the ground and be ready so we can continue to be the best place to stop on the interstate.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us here at Remarkable Retail Podcast. A real treat to meet you. Congratulations on your award again. Such a great milestone in your career, and wish you continued success into your organization. So thanks for joining us on the Remarkable Retail Podcast.
Thanks so much. I had a blast, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
If you like what you heard, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform, so you can catch up with all our great interviews, including Hal Lawton talking about Tractor Supply's remarkable Life Out Here growth story. New episodes of Season 5, presented by Market Dial, will show up each and every Tuesday. And be sure to tell your friends and colleagues in the retail industry all about us.
And I'm Steve Dennis, author of the best-selling book, Remarkable Retail, How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at StephenPDennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant, keynote speaker, and producer and host of a series of retail trade podcasts, including this one. You can learn even more about me on LinkedIn, and you can catch up with Steve and I in person at the NRF Big Show in New York, January 16th on the stage, talking about what it takes to be remarkable with Container Store SVP Gretchen Gans. See you in New York, everyone.